Hello, very warm greetings of the day to all my benevolent friends. Dear guys, today I, Kunal Nagpal, am feeling immensely amazed to welcome you back to this great economic forum with great positive energies. So, in today's discussion, we are going to analyze the core dynamics of the Indian economy with regards to its international relationships with the countries worldwide. That is, how does the current year, that is 2023, is actually a revolutionary year because it embarks the various engagements by the Indian economy with various economies on the world stage. So this is actually very encouraging. So we are going to discuss the bilateral relationships at a strategic level between the Indian economy and other economies across the globe like Sri Lanka, Armenia, and all of us are quite aware that India has actually entered into the trade agreement with USA, as we had discussed yesterday, for nearly 200 projects worth $37 billion. And India is actually quite progressive in developing the relationships with South America, that is Guyana, and then UAE, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Australia, Switzerland, and the list goes on. So this is really very encouraging. Moreover, we are also going to consider the very significant development wherein various countries are actually considering to engage in the bilateral trade with India in the currency other than dollar. That is, they are actually thinking to initiate the trade with us in terms of rupees. So this is actually again a very positive news with regards to the overall development of our economy. Also, we are going to discuss various developments, the latest developments occurring in various sectors across our economy, wherein we are going to explore the intensity of the layoffs. For instance, Swiggy, which is actually planning to lay off of the employees by the number 380. This is actually alarming. And this is only because of the reason of the global slowdown, because of which certain industries are getting affected. So, dear guys, let's begin with today's discussion, right? Actually, 2023 is likely to be a year of India's arrival on the world stage. This will be a year for the Indian economy to actually strengthen its position on the global stage while the rest of the world grapples with an impending recession, war, and inflation. The Reserve Bank of India, that is RBI, said in its report on the state of the economy. The basic distinction of being the most populated country with a sixth of the world's working population could only lift the prospects for the economy to surpass Germany and Japan by the year 2027. The central bank said, citing a forecast by the International Monetary Fund. In closing, 2023 may well be the opening ajar of a window in which India's time on the world stage is actually arriving, the RBI said in its commentary, which is a part of the bank's monthly bulletin. In April, India's population will be the largest in the world, projected at 1.4 billion. With a median age of 28, this is actually India's chance to seize the demographic dividend and herald its emergence as an economic powerhouse of the future, the RBI said. So, my dear friends, this is really a very proud moment because it very beautifully demonstrates the concept of mastering leadership, as we had discussed last night. The beautiful concept of actually mastering over the self, and obviously mastering leadership in the societal at the societal level. And India is actually touching the sky. Now we are going to discuss another very significant development with regards to the aviation sector in the Indian economy. So, as per the statistical analysis, the domestic airlines flew 123 million passengers in the year 2022 itself, as per the DGCA. The airlines in India carried 123.2 million domestic passengers in the year 2022 against 83.8 million in the previous year. December 2022 actually clocked the highest traffic in a single month, the figure being 12.7 million passengers. The numbers were actually quite lower than in the pre-pandemic 2019, when the airlines carried 144.1 million passengers across the country, but higher than in 2017, when 117.1 million passengers took to the air. The market leader, Indigo, cornered 54.9% of the market in December 2022 and closed the year with 56.1% market share. Vistara was second with 9.2% market share in 2022, followed by Go First at 8.8%. Air India and SpiceJet were tied at about 8.7% each. The demand stayed high all through the week in December. For instance, Tuesdays are considered to be the leanest day for air travel, but in December, all Tuesdays saw the daily passenger traffic of more than 4 lakh. So, after the year-end revelry, though the numbers have begun dipping again as the airline industry moves into the first quarter of the year, typically a lean phase for travel, the daily domestic traffic fell below 4 lakh on January 9, 2023 and stayed low up to January 13, when the festive travel again pushed the daily domestic traffic above the 4 lakh mark from January 14 to 16. The data from the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, that is DGCA, showed that Indigo had the highest on-time performance computed for 4 metro airports, that is Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad and Mumbai. Indigo had an OTP, that is the on-time performance, of 88.6%, followed by Vistara, that is 81.5%, and Air India, that is 81.4%. So, on the domestic flight bookings, we expect the Republic Day weekend to actually emerge even stronger as compared to the New Year weekend of December 2022, January 2023, said Mr. Vipul Prakash, Chief Operating Officer, Make My Trip. Goa, Kochi and Srinagar are actually the most booked leisure destinations. The United Arab Emirates, Thailand and Singapore ruled the charts on the international front. Now, after this very overwhelming in-depth analysis of the aviation sector with regards to the Indian economy, I would like to move forward to discuss the increasing bilateral relationship between India and Sri Lanka and how it is taking a new twist. Sri Lanka basically thanks India for its generous support, assurances given to the International Monetary Fund to restructure its debt. Sri Lanka on Friday thanked India for the generous support of a 3.9 billion US dollar credit line last year, and the assurances given to the IMF to restructure the country's debt after the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Shankar, conveyed India's commitment to increase the investment flows to hasten the debt-ridden island nation's economic recovery. Dr. S. Shankar, who is here on a 2-day visit on Thursday, met Sri Lanka's top leadership, including his Sri Lankan counterpart, Mr. Ali Sapri, and President Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Actually, it was my privilege to welcome my friend, Honorable External Affairs Ministry of India, Dr. S. Shankar, in Colombo. I thank him for the generous support of the 3.9 billion US dollar credit line last year and assurances given to the International Monetary Fund to restructure the debt holistically. Sri Lanka is actually fortunate to have caring and considerate friends, Mr. Sapri tweeted on Friday. A pleasure to meet with Honorable Dr. S. Shankar, Minister of External Affairs of India in Colombo. Discussed strengthening the bilateral relationship between our nations, people-to-people contacts, trade and investment ties, and appreciated India's steadfast assistance for Sri Lanka. He tweeted on Thursday. Shankar, who arrived here from the Maldives on the second leg of his 2-nation tour, met Mr. Sapri and discussed the issues of mutual and regional interests. A good meeting with the Foreign Minister, Mr. Ali Sapri, and other ministerial colleagues this evening in Colombo discussed India-Sri Lanka cooperation in infrastructure, connectivity, energy, industry, and health, Dr. Shankar tweeted. President Wickremesinghe hosted a working dinner for the minister. So this really tells us that how beautifully we are diversifying our international relationships across different geographies across the globe. So look forward to my discussions with the leadership tomorrow morning. Dr. Shankar tweeted after he held talks with Mr. Sapri as India informed the International Monetary Fund its assurance which the global lender wants from the creditors for providing a much needed bailout to the cash-strapped island nation. Sri Lanka, which is actually trying to secure a 2.9 billion US dollar bridge loan from the International Monetary Fund, was negotiating to get financial assurances from its major creditors, China, Japan, and India, which is actually the requisite for Colombo to get the bailout package. The International Monetary Fund bailout has been put on a hold as Sri Lanka pursues the talks with creditors to meet the global lenders' condition for the facility. Conveyed our commitment to increase investment flows to Sri Lanka to actually hasten its economic recovery, Dr. Shankar tweeted after his meetings. Dr. Shankar will call on President Wickremesinghe on Friday. Dr. Shankar is also scheduled to meet the Prime Minister, Mr. Dinesh Gunawardena. Sri Lanka's unprecedented economic crisis had basically brought the best out of India's concerns for its southern neighbor, given the island nation's proximity in economic cooperation with China until then. When the crisis started to bite a year ago, India came forward with assistance worth 4 billion US dollars. On Tuesday, the President Wickremesinghe told the Parliament that his government has actually successfully completed its debt restructuring talks with India. India's Additional Secretary of the Finance Ministry, Mr. Rajat Kumar Mishra, on Tuesday informed IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva that New Delhi has actually confirmed its support to Sri Lanka on the issue of debt restructuring. Last week, Sri Lanka actually completed its debt restructuring talks with Japan. Sri Lanka began the debt restructuring talks with its creditors in September last year as warranted by its agreement with the IMF for $2.9 billion facility over 4 years. It began negotiating with the International Monetary Fund for a bailout after having announced its first ever sovereign debt default in April last year, that is 2022. The IMF facility would actually enable the island nation to obtain bridging finance from markets and other lending institutions such as the ADB, that is the Asian Development Bank, and the World Bank. Dr. Jaishankar incidentally became the first foreign dignitary during the economic crisis to visit Sri Lanka. His visit in March last year, at the height of the crisis, assured Sri Lankans that India's neighborhood first policy was pretty much in play. Sri Lanka is actually a close friend and neighbor, and India has always stood with the people of Sri Lanka, the Ministry of External Affairs said in New Delhi on Tuesday. Dr. Jaishankar's visit to Colombo is actually a testimony to the importance that India attaches to its close and friendly relations with Sri Lanka, it said. Sri Lanka was actually hit by an unprecedented financial crisis in the year 2022, the worst since its independence from Britain in 1948, due to a severe paucity of foreign exchange reserves, sparking political turmoil in the country, which led to the ouster of the all-powerful Rajapaksa family, thereby causing policy paralysis throughout the Sri Lankan economy. Now, my dear friends, let's go back to explore the overall dynamics of the India-Sri Lanka trade relationship when they held talks on 15 million US dollar grant for Buddhist ties and Tamil Cultural Center. And this is the basic development held in November 2022. This is actually quite significant. That's why I'm discussing the development of November 2022 in the current discussion. Actually, India has started talks with Sri Lanka for the quick implementation of a $15 million Indian grant for the promotion of Buddhist and Tamil Nadu ties in this island nation. At that time, the respected Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji announced a 15 million US dollar special grant for the promotion of bilateral Buddhist ties at a virtual bilateral summit on September 26, 2020. And the memorandum of understanding governing it was signed on March 28, 2022 during the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's visit to Colombo then. High Commissioner Mr. Gopal Bagle held two separate meetings with Dvrsfcn Nayaka, Minister of Buddhasana, Religious and Cultural Affairs, on the overall implementation of the grant by the Government of India for the promotion of Buddhist ties and functioning of Jaffna Cultural Center, that is JCC, in Colombo. A press release by the Indian Commission said, the High Commissioner and Minister Dvrsfcn agreed to immediately undertake the steps for the quick implementation of the jointly identified priority projects under the grant in numerous areas pertaining to Buddhism, it said. So the specific action plans regarding the overall installation of the solar power facilities in the Buddhist places of worship across Sri Lanka were identified during the meeting. In the meeting regarding the functioning of the Tamil Cultural Center, built with an Indian grant of 11 million US dollars. The focus was basically on the establishment of a framework to make the state-of-the-art facilities in the center available for the regular use by the common public. The center, a glowing example of India-Sri Lanka development partnership, actually consists of multiple facilities such as a double-story museum, a theater-style auditorium with a capacity of more than 600 people, an 11-storied learning tower, and a public square cum amphitheater, among others, according to the release. The High Commission said the meetings underscored the Indian government's commitment to actually bring about a palpable impact on the daily lives of the Sri Lankan people through the implementation of people-centric grant projects. India has been associated with the implementation of more than 85 grant projects in Sri Lanka, and the latest endeavors include the Sri Lanka Unique Digital Identity Project, the press release said. So really, it's truly marvelous, and it shows that how committed India is to helping its neighbors, to helping its friends at the time of adversities, and also in the normal times to actually strengthen and diversify the overall relationships at an excellent level. Now, my dear friends, let's go through the overall relationships India is developing with Armenia in the changing regional and international geopolitics. I repeat, why I have actually specified and emphasized on the terminology, the changing regional and international geopolitics. Because as all of us know that these times are actually quite sensitive if I talk about the global scenario existing in the current scenario. And this is actually expected to further intensify. So if in such tough times we can diversify in such an excellent manner, then this is truly commendable. This is truly commendable. So, India and Armenia have centuries-old historical ties and are strategically important to one another in the modern times. However, despite the convergence of interests, the bilateral ties remain underdeveloped. Dr. S. Jaishankar, India's External Affairs Minister, visited Armenia in October 2021, the first visit by an Indian foreign minister since the two countries established the diplomatic relationships in the year 1992. Now, in order to elevate the level of the bilateral cooperation at a holistic level, there are some areas that actually necessitate immediate attention. Agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and information technology are the three key areas where New Delhi and Yerevan could actually expand their partnership. Due to the absence of direct land connectivity between the two nations, the bilateral trade is actually below its potential. So, some notable initiatives have been launched to address the issues associated with low amounts of trade. However, there has been a delay in implementing such measures, which has impeded the growth of the bilateral ties between the two regions. A free trade agreement, that is the FTA, between New Delhi and the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union, that is EU, is currently being negotiated. Since Armenia is an EAEU member, the conclusion of this free trade agreement could actually contribute to boosting the bilateral trade. Also, India and Armenia are the members of the International North-South Transport Corridor. Yet, Closer cooperation between these two countries is actually required in order to promote this international north-south transport corridor as the means of transportation between the two countries. Following the Ukrainian conflict, the changing geopolitical landscape presented an opportunity to actually revitalize the INSTC, that is, the International North-South Transport Corridor. So, since Russia is pushing for it, New Delhi and Yerevan should also proactively support it. However, to stimulate the areas mentioned above of the bilateral cooperation, it is actually crucial to maintain consistency in the bilateral engagement at the highest level. Now, let's explore the overall strategic dimension of India-Armenia relations. Basically, the changing regional geopolitics of the South, that is Caucasus, has put India-Armenia relations to the test. As Azerbaijan's all-weather ally, Turkey is actually attempting to position itself as a regional leader and wants to expand its outreach to the Central Asian region as well. Azerbaijan suffers as a launching pad for Turkey's expansion into Central Asia. So countering Turkey's and its close ally Pakistan's disruptive objectives is a key convergence of interests between India and Armenia. These regional geopolitical changes have also prompted India and Armenia to actually strengthen their relationship. The overall cooperation in connectivity, security, and defense has actually emerged as an important component of their bilateral ties. Cooperation in the defense sector is a crucial area with a lot of potential. Armed conflict along Armenia's border with Azerbaijan has pushed the country to actually sign a defense export deal with India. Under a newly inked export agreement, New Delhi would send military weapons such as missiles, rockets, and ammunition to Armenia. Moreover, indigenous Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launchers, anti-tank rockets, and ammunition will be exported for the first time from India to Armenia. This contract is actually estimated to be worth more than 2,000 crore rupees. Earlier, in May 2020, Delhi and Yerevan agreed to exchange 4 Swati weapons locating radars developed by the DRDO and capable of pinpointing the enemy assets like mortars, shells, and rockets at a distance of 50 kilometers for $40 million. So this comes as the border tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan keep on escalating frequently. The latter, that is Azerbaijan, maintains strong diplomatic and military ties with Pakistan and Turkey. Turkey, Pakistan, and Azerbaijan signed a trilateral ministers' agreement in 2017 to actually promote the defense cooperation and strengthen the bilateral military assistance agreements. So as a result, the recent defense export agreement between India and Armenia is very strategic. The Indian policymakers intend to extend the international north-south transport corridor through Armenia to connect the Chabahar port in southeast Iran and the Indian Ocean to Eurasia and Finland. So once fully operational, the Chabahar will actually become one of the region's most strategic and busy ports. The international North-South Transport Corridor, which many see as a counter to China's Belt and Road Initiative, was basically conceived in 2000 by India, Iran, and Russia. So this will also allow Indian and other Southeast Asian exporters to actually reach Iran and other Central Asian countries while avoiding Pakistan and Afghanistan, where security concerns continue to be a major issue. So, in conclusion, it would be correct to state that India and Armenia share common interests in a wide range of areas, and that there is actually a great potential for security cooperation. And the defense agreement concluded by the two countries may open the door for increased security cooperation. Armenia also provides a viable location for India's outreach to the South Caucasus, where Turkey aspires to be the regional leader. In addition to trade, economy, and connectivity, there is actually a potential for the trilateral engagement between India, Armenia, and Russia in the security sector. So all of this, however, necessitates India's active participation and Yerevan's reciprocating approach. Now, my dear friends, after having developed this broad and comprehensive framework to understand the overall nature of this bilateral strategic relationship between India and Armenia, and also analyzing the core prospects of the trilateral relationship between India, Armenia, and Russia, let's move forward to discuss another significant development pertaining to our domestic economy. That is, as per Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, India actually aims to become the key semiconductor supplier. Sensing a huge opportunity in the global semiconductor market, India has set in motion an ambitious plan to become a key supplier for the world, with the government itself putting in $10 billion US. Communications Minister Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw said on Thursday. So, speaking at the session on learning from semiconductor supply shocks at the World Economic Forum annual meeting 2023 here, the minister said there is actually a very large market that requires semiconductor, and India has a huge potential in terms of infrastructure, talent pool, and technology. These are our core strengths which we need to exploit at the best possible level to not only reap fruits for our own economy, but also for the entire globe, right? And that's why our respected minister, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, has made such a strong statement on the international forum, that is WEF 2023. Our university system that produces a large number of talent is also helping a lot, as we have tied up with many universities to prepare the right talent, he said. Asked about the government's own investment plans, he said the government itself is putting in $10 billion US, and it has chalked out a long haul program. As per him, we see a huge potential for India to become a key semiconductor supplier for the entire world, and that too for the latest requirements, including for electric vehicles and for all cutting-edge technologies. We are convinced that the demand is actually going to be quite huge. So the industry is going to double in size to $1 trillion in the next 6 to 7 years, with the growth rate set to accelerate in a big way. Mr. Vaishnaw also said the government is quite mindful of the environment and it will ensure that the new factories are supplied with green energy. So, my dear friends, as we are observing the gradual transition towards the greener economy worldwide, we are paying a lot of emphasis towards the attainment of sustainable development goals, that is the SDGs, the set of 17 SDGs, which is actually the intent of the entire globe to give justice towards the attainment of the same. And if India can capitalize on its core strength to be a very contributing participant towards this particular attainment of the global objective, it's really commendable. It's really commendable. So there are very bright prospects for India at a global scale. Now, in this regard, we are going to discuss another very important development with regards to the growth of the technological sector and the overall innovation techniques in India as far as renewable energy is concerned. So there is tremendous role of India in the growth of this particular sector, which is the key sector for the entire globe. So, renewable energy. India took significant steps to grow the renewable energy sector in 2022. It has over 170 gigawatts of renewable energy installed capacity and projects of over 80 gigawatts under various stages of development. So, to achieve the 500 gigawatt target by 2030, as being claimed by our respected Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, India must add 25 to 30 gigawatts in 2023 and the subsequent years. So, the industry expects substantial support from the government in this particular drive. Now, what are the major issues and concerns towards the attainment of this particular objective? Actually, severe demand-supply mismatch for the solar modules, followed with high customs duty, which has actually been discouraging imports, while adequate domestic capacity is not available. This has also raised prices and impacted the overall project viability, the industry says. The ease of doing business can be improved further. So, what are the key takeaways? Actually, India took significant steps to grow the renewable energy sector in 2022. It has over 170 gigawatts of renewable energy installed capacity and projects of over 80 gigawatts under various stages of development. So, to achieve the 500 gigawatt target by 2030, India must add 25 to 30 gigawatts in 2023 itself, and subsequent years we need to keep enhancing our overall efforts towards the same. The industry expects the substantial support from the government as well. So this is the overall run-up to the budget. And the major issues and concerns relate to the severe demand-supply mismatch for the solar modules. High customs duty has discouraged the imports, while adequate domestic capacity is not available. This has also raised prices and impacted the overall project viability, the industry says, and also the ease of doing business can be improved further. So, India's installed power capacity at the state level is basically 29,738 for the renewable, whereas for the thermal it is 75,180. This is about the state level. This is a state level statistical analysis. Now, if I talk about the private sector, there is actually for the renewable sector it is 1,19,227, whereas for the thermal sector it's 85,911. So there's a lot of push at the private level for the renewable energy sector. Then for the central level, it's actually the lowest. That is 17,297 for the renewable and 74,927 for the thermal. I would like to remind you that we generate the thermal energy majorly from the coal, which is the fossil fuel. So we can interpret from this statistical analysis as we are moving towards the greener drive. That is the transition from the fossil fuels to the non-fossil fuels. We need to work quite hard at the state level and the central level. The performance at the private level is actually still appreciated. It's actually still appreciable, right? Now, let's discuss the key demands, the general key demands. The funds available at the lower interest rate of 3 to 4% to the overseas competitors against 8 to 10% in India. The production linked incentive, that is the PLI scheme for wind turbine generation and devices. Also, the increment in the overall PLI allocation for the solar module manufacturing, currently at 19,500 crore rupees. Further, the incentives for provisions for the development of battery storage system and the incentives to promote the 2G ethanol, flex fuel and hybrid vehicles. Now, what are the various tax aspects associated with this particular aspect? The favorable tax on income derived from the sale of renewable energy certificates, that is RECs. Then treating RECs similar to the carbon credits. Lower import duty on wind and electrolytes. Then removing the levy on the biofuels, one of the key demands. And lower duty on solar panels till the domestic capacity comes up. So dear friends, as yesterday we had developed an in-depth analytical framework for the textile industry with regard to the Indian economy and what's its overall run-up for the budget. Similarly, today we have analyzed the prospects for the renewable energy sector, which again has a lot of sparking future prospects for India to grow in this particular sector. That's why we have discussed this particular aspect in detail. Now, I would like to discuss the latest status pertaining to the Air India incident in the aviation sector, wherein Mr. Mishra has been banned for 4 months for his subsequent air travels because of the very shameless act he had committed with a 70-year-old co-passenger. That is, he urinated on her. This is really very shameless act. So let's discuss, let's analyze and see what action has been taken against him and what is the final decision of the concerned authorities regarding this particular matter. Air India on Thursday said it has imposed a 4-month flying ban on Mr. Shankar Mishra, who is accused of urinating on a woman co-passenger on board a flight in November last year, that is in November 2022. The date was 26 November 2022. An airline official said the ban is with the immediate effect and is in addition to the 30-day ban it had imposed on the individual earlier. The incident of Mishra, who was in an inebriated condition, allegedly urinated on the woman co-passenger on board the Air India flight from New York to Delhi on November 26, 2022. The independent 3-member internal committee under the chairmanship of the former district judge has concluded that Mr. Shankar Mishra is covered under the definition of unruly passenger and is banned from flying over a period of 4 months as per the relevant provisions of the civil aviation requirement, an Air India spokesperson said in a statement. The passenger has already been put on the airline's no-fly list. The Tata Group-owned Air India has shared a copy of the committee's report with the Director General of Civil Aviation and will also be intimating other airlines operating in the country, the spokesperson said. Other airlines can take their own decision on whether any ban should be imposed on the individual. Currently, Mr. Mishra is in jail and the case is before a Delhi court. On 4th January, Air India said it has imposed a 30-day travel ban on Mr. Mishra but did not disclose the time period of the ban. A day later, that is on January 5, 2023, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation issued the notices to the officials and the crew of the New York to Delhi flight asking why action should not be taken against them for the dereliction of duty while handling the November 26 urination incident. The conduct of the concerned airline appears to be very, very unprofessional and has led to the overall systemic failure, the regulator had said about the incident. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation, that is the DGCA, has issued the show cause notices to the accountable manager of Air India, its director in flight services, all the pilots and cabin crew members of that particular flight as to why enforcement action should not be taken against them for the dereliction of their regulatory obligations. Under the DGCA rules, the airline concerned is actually responsible for informing the regulator within 12 hours of landing of the aircraft in case of any incident of unruly passengers or passenger raise or the misconduct reported in their flight. Besides, the airline concerned has to set up a 3-member internal committee. It will have a retired district and sessions judge as the chairman, a representative from a different scheduled airline as a member, and a representative from a passengers association or consumer association or retired officer of Consumer Dispute Redressal Forum as the 3rd member. The committee can actually decide the duration of flying ban on the unruly passenger within 30 days, and there could be a lifetime ban. During the pendency of the decision by the committee, the airline concerned may ban such unruly passenger from flying for a period of up to 30 days as per the rules. After the committee takes the decision, the airline should maintain a database of all such unruly passengers and hence inform the same to the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, that is DGCA, which is the custodian for maintaining the no-fly list. In this case, the woman who had accused Mr. Mishra of urinating on her on the flight on January 13 rejected the claims made by him that she seems to have urinated on herself. This is really very, very disgraceful. Saying this is really very, very disgraceful on the part of Mr. Mishra, who has been making such absurd remarks just to protect himself. This is really very bad. So this lady said that these are completely false and concocted, and by their very nature are disparaging and actually derogatory in nature. Mr. Mishra's counsel, while arguing against the police petition seeking the revision of an order passed by the ministerial court refusing his custodial interrogation on January 12, claimed that he did not commit the offense and that she urinated on herself. This is really very, very disgraceful. Where our society is heading, we really need to check our ethical standards. On January 8, Tata Group Chairman Mr. N. Chandrasekaran admitted that Air India's response to the incident of the drunk passenger urinating on the woman should have been much swifter. We fell short of addressing this situation the way we should have, he had said in a statement. So this is really a very alarming incident, and it's fine. We are actually acting upon it, and the concerned authorities are taking the necessary actions. But it's really an alarming situation for the entire society to check our moral standards. Where are we heading? Where are we heading? And also after committing the crime, you still have the guts to say that you didn't commit it, and instead you further enhance your sin by making absurd comments and false allegations. This is really very, very disgraceful on the part of such unethical and immoral components of the society. Now, my dear friends, as I discussed in the beginning of the session, we are about to discuss the latest trend of layoff being adopted by Swiggy, who is of the decision to sack 380 employees. And this statement has been made by the CEO of the company, Mr. Mejiti. And he tells the staff to shut the meat business vertical. So, the food and grocery delivery company Swiggy will sack 380 employees. Company CEO Shri Harsha Mejiti told employees through an internal note. Economic Times has reviewed the note sent to all employees of Swiggy on Friday morning. We are actually implementing a very difficult decision to reduce the size of our team as a part of the overall restructuring exercise. In this process, we will be bidding goodbye to 380 talented Swigsters, the CEO said. Economic Times reported on December 9 that Swiggy was actually planning to fire at least 250 employees and that the number could actually be higher. Mejiti said that the growth of the company's food delivery business has slowed down and has not been in line with the company's projections. He said that the company actually overhired and it has been a case of poor judgment on his part. Our overhiring is actually a case of poor judgment and I should have done better in this particular aspect, he told the employees. The company has also decided to shut down its meat delivery business among the many verticals that Swiggy had started along with the food and grocery delivery. Swiggy's Instamart competes with Big Basket's BB Now, Blinkit, Zepto and Dunzo in grocery as well as the meat delivery. So while we continue to be fully committed to exploring the new business opportunities, we have also taken a harder look at some of our existing new verticals. Effective very soon, we will be shutting down our meat marketplace, Mr. Mejiti said. He said that meat will continue to be delivered through its Instamart service, but decided to shut down the vertical as it actually failed to achieve the product market fit, even as the team behind its meat vertical was doing exceptionally well with the solid inputs. Mr. Mejiti said Swiggy will actually continue to be invested in all the other new business verticals. The company recently started several units including premium grocery delivery service Handpicked, direct-to-commerce, e-commerce marketplace Minis and restaurant table reservation service Dine Out. He said that the impacted employees will get the compensation of 3 to 6 months salary depending on the employee's tenure, with a guaranteed payout of at least 3 months' wages. So, with this, Swiggy is the latest to join the ongoing wave of fresh layoffs in the Indian startups. Economic Times has been reporting on the job cuts at startups such as ShareChat, Dunzo, Rebel Foods, Hubilo, Ola, and Cashfree, among others. These job cuts come after Indian startups laid off at least 18,000 jobs last year, that's in 2022. Now let's discuss the overall burn and competition effect with regard to this particular aspect. The process-baked Swiggy has been trying to reduce the cash burn in the key businesses such as food delivery and Instamart amid a clear slowdown in the late-stage funding in startups. Mr. Process said in a filing in November last year that its share of Swiggy's trading loss increased to $105 million from $34 million, driven by the investments to increase the growth in both the core food delivery business and in Instamart. This basically translated to a burn of over $300 million for the 6 months ended September 2022. Meanwhile, it is also facing increased competition from Zomato-owned Blinkit. So, according to the brokerage firm Jefferies, Swiggy's losses during the January to June period were actually much higher at over $315 million compared with around $50 million in losses for the rival Zomato on a standalone basis and nearly $170 million inclusive of losses at the Zomato's quick commerce unit, that is Blinkit. Now, my dear friends, after having developed the broad understanding of the layoff trend going on in the Swiggy company, I would like to discuss another very important aspect related to General Motors, that is GM. The General Motors laid off workers sue the global CEO. The employees union of the General Motors Talegaon plant has sued Mary Barra, the US-based automaker's global CEO, as well as several other senior executives in a contempt of court case. General Motors, which actually formally excited the employees after exiting the Indian market in 2017, has failed to pay 1,086 retrenched workers who are part of the General Motors employee union compensatory wages of 50% of their monthly salary starting April last year, as ordered by a local industrial court, even as it continues to hear the dispute, according to a filing with the Bombay High Court dated January 16, 2023. Considering that Pune Industrial Court's order was to be implemented from April 2022, the amount that the General Motor owes to the workers totals 25 crore rupees, a member of the union told Economic Times. So in addition to Ms. Barra, the employee union also included Shilpan Amin, Senior Vice President and President of General Motors International, along with Mr. Asif Khatri, VP and Whole-Time Director, Ms. Ritu Pandey Chatterjee, HR Director, Mr. Prajot Gaonkar, HR Head or Plant Director, General Motors India, in the case. 2 years after the last car rolled off the assembly line at General Motors India's Pune unit, the US car makers' struggle to sell the factory continues. Its deal with China's Great Wall Motors collapsed last year amid the legal tussle with the employees. A spokesperson for the General Motors India, that is the GM India, said in an email that the company basically continues to explore the options for a sale of a plant which has strong linkages with the supply chain and transport networks. Employees have been legally separated and we remain very confident of our legal position, the spokesperson said. The Pune Industrial Court had ordered the payment of 50% of the salary from April 7, 2022 till a final decision on the case. The company challenged this order in the Bombay High Court, and after the High Court verdict in the favor of workers in September, General Motors India challenged the same in the Supreme Court. This too was redirected back to Pune Industrial Court, with the Apex Court ordering the lower court to actually conclude the long protracted battle by January 2023. So now, my dear friends, this really helps us to analyze the core dynamics existing in the General Motors company and how can the employee union actually strengthen its overall teamwork to actually call for justice. The voice of people really matters if we talk about the ethical terms. And the wise decision is bound to take place in such a scenario. As we have seen in this case, the Employees Union of General Motors Talegaon plant has sued Ms. Mary Barra, the US-based automaker's global CEO, as well as several other senior executives in a contempt of court case. So that's why it's often said the truth can never be hidden and the justice has to be given, even though it may get late, but still justice has to be given. It's the law of nature. Furthermore, we are going to analyze the latest developments occurring in international trade by the Indian economy with various economies like UAE and Saudi Arabia, who are basically thinking to conduct and settle the non-oil trade in rupees. The United Arab Emirates is in early discussions with India to trade the non-oil commodities in Indian rupees. Emirati Minister for the Foreign Trade, Dr. Thani Al-Zayudi, said on Thursday. The UAE signed a wide-ranging free trade agreement last year with India, which, along with China, is among the biggest trade partners for the Gulf Arab oil and gas producers, most of whose currencies are pegged to the US dollar. As Zayudi, asked by the Reuters whether the trade in rupees with India was on the table, replied, "Yes, we are in discussion with the Indians. The talks are actually related to the non-oil commodities," he added. They are in the early stages, he said in an interview on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. The United Arab Emirates trade deal with India basically aims to increase the bilateral non-oil trade to $100 billion in the next 5 years. Other countries, including China, had also raised the issue of settling the non-oil trade payments in local currencies, the minister said, but discussions were not at any advanced stage as of now. The large majority of Gulf trade is basically conducted in the US dollars, but the countries such as India and China are increasingly seeking to pay in the local currencies for various reasons, including lowering the transaction costs. We actually have to be realistic. We are planning our budgets based on US dollars, so it is not an overnight movement, Al-Zayudi said. There is actually a discussion not only with India, but we are managing it in a way that does not conflict with the overall interests of the nation. He said, Any advance in discussions would have to make sense for all countries involved, and for the United Arab Emirates would have to add value to the growth of the Gulf Arab states' economy. The United Arab Emirates has said its trade relations were increasingly looking to Asia, while its primary security and investment ties were in the West, where the Gulf Arab states have long-standing strategic partnerships, especially with the United States. Zayedi said that following the bilateral trade deals with India and Indonesia, an agreement with Cambodia was expected to conclude in the first quarter. China's president visited Saudi Arabia in December, where he participated in a Gulf Arab summit and called for the oil trade in yuan as Beijing seeks to establish its currency internationally. Saudi Arabia's finance minister said this week that the kingdom, the world's top oil exporter and the largest Arab economy, would actually be open to trade in other currencies aside from the US dollar. For daily divorce updates in your inbox, this is really very, very good news that we are really moving towards this particular reform of engaging in the bilateral international trade that is settling the trade in terms of local currencies, and for India it's the UAE India trade in terms of rupees. This is really an enlightening news for enhancing the overall trade relationships. Now, my dear friends, on the similar lines, we are going to consider how Saudi Arabia to trade in the Indian rupee. Kingdom says open to discussions on settlement in currencies other than dollar. As we have just seen, Saudi Arabia said it is open to discussions about trade in currencies other than the US dollars. This comes at a time when the Indian Central Bank has been trying to make the Indian rupee globally acceptable for the foreign trade settlements. A report by the Bloomberg TV quoted Saudi Arabia's finance minister, Mr. Mohammed Al-Zaddan, saying, "There are no issues with discussing how we settle our trade arrangements, whether it is in US dollars, whether it is the euro, whether it is the Saudi riyal." Mohammed Al-Jaddan made the statement on the sidelines of the ongoing World Economic Forum 2023 at Davos, Switzerland. He also said, "I don't think we are waving away or ruling out any discussion that will help improve the table around the world." So it will further help to actually strengthen the India-UAE ties. The statement of the finance minister of Saudi Arabia holds significance as it comes within months after the two countries in September had discussions on the feasibility of basically starting the rupee real trade and introduction of the UPI and RuPay cards in the kingdom. Notably, India and the United Arab Emirates had already signed the free trade agreement in February 2022 to enhance the bilateral trade and economic ties. Earlier, the Trade Minister of India, Mr. Piyush Goyal, stressed upon the need to actually diversify with UAE through trade. After meeting with his Saudi counterpart, Mr. Majid bin Abdullah Al Kasabi last year, Mr. Goyal said, discussed ways to attract greater investment and further diversify the bilateral trade to boost economic ties between India and Saudi Arabia. So according to a data by the Indian Commerce Ministry, in the first quarter, that is April to July of the current fiscal year 2022-23, India's imports from the kingdom surged by 93% to $15.5 billion, while exports were up by about 22% to $3.5 billion. Now, with regard to the Indian rupee trade settlement, the Reserve Bank of India, that is the RBI, India's central bank, in July last year set up the Indian rupee trade settlement mechanism in order to attract the interest from countries. The rupee trade mechanism is actually a method of using the Indian rupee, that is INR, instead of dollars and other big currencies for international transactions. Already, Russia has started the trade settlement in Indian rupee. Sri Lanka is also in talks with India to use the Indian rupee for foreign trade transactions. India's neighbors, including Bangladesh, Nepal, and Myanmar, which have been grappling with shortage of dollar reserves, have also showed their interest in the rupee trade settlement mechanism. So, this is really very encouraging, very positive news. Also, the reports further say that Tajikistan, Cuba, Luxembourg, and Sudan have also been talking to India about using this particular mechanism. So, dear friends, after having developed such a strategic framework in a very well-aligned manner, we are able to comprehend that India is actually diversifying at a very good rate at an international level. Furthermore, we are trying to innovate and come to new strategies which would help to accelerate this process at a holistic level. For instance, the talks which are going on between the nations to actually settle the trade in the local currencies is actually a very positive news for Indian economy. That is, it would actually help to diversify the trade and to also ease the overall process with great flexibility, and to also remove various hassles involved when we were trading in terms of the US dollars. So this is really very great news. Furthermore, in this particular discussion, we have also analyzed the latest developments happening across various sectors in the Indian economy. For instance, in the aviation sector, we have seen that last year there has been a very great increase in the overall travel by the passengers through air. And this is really the great statistic being provided by the DGCA, which is showing a massive growth in the air travel as per the statistical reports. Furthermore, we have seen the latest unethical case which was reported in the aviation sector with regard to the 26th November 2022 incident wherein a man named Mr. Mishra had actually conducted a very shameless and disgraceful act of urinating on a senior co-passenger. Now, this case is in its final stages of taking the appropriate action against the accused, and obviously the justice is bound to take place. Furthermore, we have also analyzed the layoff trends being seen in various online portals like Swiggy, right? Along with that, we have seen the strength of the labor union, the employee union in case of General Motors, wherein a serious action has been taken to sue the CEO and the senior managerial staff by the employee union for the injustice they had been doing on them. So that's why the employee union has got successful in getting the justice for themselves. So now, my dear friends, on this note, I would like to conclude my today's session, and I hope you must have got full with the latest knowledge of the overall economic scenario, be it for the domestic economy or be it for the international economic developments taking at a rapid pace. So it was really nice to meet you guys, interact with you, and exchange very, very useful ideas which are very important for developing the broad overview, the broad understanding of the very, very strategic dynamics in which of the very, very strategic dynamics of the overall industry, of the overall sector in which we are residing. So I would also be very grateful if you could post your feedback, your valuable suggestions, or if you have any doubts, you may actually mention them in the comment section, and I may try my best to answer your queries at the best possible level. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.